Ja, som vi hörde här, superspännande diskussion tycker jag. Klimatförändringarna, det är lätt att landa där. Koldioxidutsläpp och allt vi vet om det. Det är lätt att landa där så att säga. Men det finns många andra delar i den gröna omställningen. Vi hörde tidigare då behovet av ren luft, något som är en bristvara i många länder och som sagt var som skapar otroligt stort lidande och kostnader. Dan Greenbaum, han är president för Health Effects Institute. Det är en organisation som bland annat ger ut en rapport om tillståndet när det gäller luft i världen. Vi har en intervju med honom här och den första frågan till honom var: hur ser det ut på luftområdet i världen just nu?
Well, in some parts of the world we've made real progress, but it continues to be an issue for two reasons. One is because in much of the developing world, low and middle income countries of Asia and Africa and even Eastern Europe, there's still substantial uncontrolled pollution. And then even in the developing world, like much of Europe and much of North America, we're conducting studies that are increasingly showing there are effects at levels that we didn't realize, lower and lower levels. So there continues to be some concern. It's not as serious, obviously, in the EU or in North America as it is in Asia.
But still things to do. Is that what I hear you saying?
A tremendous amount of work to do in many parts of the world just to understand what the problem is. There are very few good quality air quality monitors in Africa across the entire continent. So that's the first step, and then beyond that, taking the actions.
You're soon to be published the fifth annual State of Global Air report. How have things developed during these 5 years, and do you see any trends?
Well, I think two things. One, we have seen some progress. A place like China, which took a number of actions, has actually seen its ambient air quality go down and its public health impacts become less. On the other hand, if you look across most of the developing world, it's been pretty level. It has not continued to go up, but it also has not started to come down because of it takes time to put in place the controls, the programs, the other things that actually make a difference.
You state that bad air is the fourth leading risk factor for premature death. Some say it's the new tobacco, and it's the fourth behind blood pressure, tobacco, as I mentioned, and poor diet. You also say that we partly ignore these threats, and with the more than 7 million premature deaths due to in the world each year due to bad air. And in EU alone, we talk about the cost between 250 and 1 billion euro per year. How important is industrial activities when it comes to bad air or polluted air?
Well, it can vary in different countries around the world, but there's no question that industrial facilities are a major source of the air pollution impact. We're soon to publish yet another study that does that country by country and points out that the burning of both coal and liquid fuels by industry is a significant contributor, something like 25 to 30% of the air pollution burden around the world.
Taxation, emission rights, you were partly into that, and climate compensation are some of the initiatives discussed all over the world. Do you think we should consider a global air pollution tax, or if I take it more broadly, how important is regulatory actions like, for example, the new EU taxonomy?
Well, there's been an interesting set of tools that people have brought forward to try and create the setting in which industry and others take action on air pollution. And I think actually the EU has led some of the efforts to actually use taxation, tax incentives, and other things to do that. We've seen here, even in the United States, that tax benefits have really accelerated the adoption of solar energy and other things as well. But often at the end, and I actually used to be a regulator, the head of air pollution and environmental control in the state of Massachusetts in the US, often to provide the really level playing field so that all industries, all sources have to take action, then government action, government regulation, setting the clear standards is the only fair way to move it forward.
Talking about regulatory actions and so on, what do you expect to be the next trend within that, and how do you see, the reporting and follow-up of companies coming up and from the regulatory bodies and countries?
Well, I think you're going to see continued pressure to reduce the emissions standards from a variety of sources, industry, vehicles, and others. And that will require reporting. You'll see more continuous emission monitors that are placed on smokestacks at factories to actually test whether or not the levels are coming down. And you'll see a growing interest, as I said a minute ago, in providing financial incentives for the investments that are necessary. Sometimes that comes in the form of cap and trade type programs, trading type programs, which allow companies that are the most efficient to actually sell their credits and make the reductions in the most cost-effective manner.
So it sounds like there's a combination of different actions needed here to get clean air.
I think there is no one magic, what we would call magic bullet, to solve this problem. It will take multiple approaches, and as you and others there know, there are every company is different, every factory is different, everybody, and so figuring out how to have that level playing field, but allow for the flexibility and the innovation is always going to be a challenge, but I think an opportunity.
And it's easy, of course, to talk about the regulations and so on, but in the end, there is also personal responsibility into this.
There is, and I think increasingly we're seeing some trends in what people are willing to buy, what they're willing to do. Certainly in the vehicles they're willing to purchase, where you're seeing much more interest in understanding how their purchasing activities could affect the much larger environment. And that puts a responsibility on the companies who are serving that public as well to come up with the most efficient and green products.
A final question then. What do you say would be the three most effective initiatives to radically bring down the levels of air pollution and to reduce the amount of premature deaths? Just as a closing question to you.
Well, that's a nice, small and easy question. Well, first of all, I think we always have to remember that pollution is waste. It is, if a company is polluting, that means it is either burning its energy inefficiently, or it is putting product that it's spent money to create out in leaks and other emissions. So the number one thing is policies and corporate governance that says we are going to make ourselves the most efficient company in the world. We're going to reduce the pollution at the source. We're going to source different products to go as inputs to our process. And the government and the regulatory agencies have to set up the system to reward that activity. So number one, improved efficiency. Number two, technological innovation. We've seen that over and over and over again. We have something in the US called best available control technology that is a rolling standard. So every time somebody comes up with a new way of doing things, the next plant that comes in needs to meet this newest standard. And I think best available control technology is really important, and that innovation is important. And finally, but not least, public reporting of what's coming out of all the sources, what the levels of ambient air pollution are. That's what motivates the political bodies to continue to pay attention.
Ja, och den här rapporten State of Global Air Reporten finns på deras hemsida. HEI heter alltså organisationen. Thomas Niklasson på Nederman var den som intervjuade.